Hospital Porters, Pride and Dignity, Stop the New World Order. Welcome to Hapanwo TV. Well, my goodness me. Quite a lot has happened since mid-July when I made the last UFO Disclosure video. The storm has happened. Storm Area 51. I did a live stream about that, you remember, and the link is in the description box to that, so you'll be able to see that and what happened. And well, it wasn't quite what I expected, and I was pleased and I was relieved, as you'll find out. Anyway, what else has happened? Quite a lot. Now, you're all familiar with TTSA and ATTIP, these little rows of letters which have become quite, almost like quite synonymous with ufology now. Everyone sort of knows about them. It's almost like a part of ufology now. The TTSA, To the Stars Academy of Arts and Sciences, of course, an organisation established by Tom DeLonge, the rock star. He's assisted with all kinds of people. And you know, some of them are a bit suspicious, you know, some of the people involved. I've been into that before. But anyway, this information came to light about ATTIP, another row of letters, the Advanced Aerial Threat Identification Program, or Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program. The acronym means two things depending on the source. Now, this all broke in December 2017, and I remember exactly what I was doing. In fact, if you go to the Basis project, it actually breaks while I'm on the air doing a live stream with Colin Wolford at Miles Johnston's studio. And basically Miles in the gallery breaks in to say, guys, you never guess what's happened, the Pentagon have just released a whole load of stuff about UFOs. And I thought, what? Yeah. So I was there when the moment happened. Well, of course, it wasn't quite that simple, was it? Because it wasn't exactly the Pentagon that had released it, we thought. We weren't sure. We had no reason to think that. All we knew was that the To the Stars Academy had released it, and TTSA is an organisation that's not always straightforward with people. It keeps its own secrets, which has led to a lot of speculation, a lot of suspicion, some of it justified, I would say. But then we thought, well, who's Luis Elizondo, this guy who said he worked for ATTIP, there's Senator Harry Reid, all these other people. I mean, Bob Bigelow is the only name I was familiar with, because of course he's very well known as a rich philanthropist who's very into UFOs. He funds a lot of very important UFO projects, such as the Skinwalker Ranch investigation. Anyway, he was involved too. It was all been classified. It was all classified for the first time he spoke out about it. Now, we couldn't be sure that ATTIP simply wasn't some kind of hoax, and Luis Elizondo was some kind of showman. We knew that he was at the Department of Defense. He was a Department of Defense official. He'd worked in intelligence all his life. I mean, you know, how do you know he wasn't spying? He wasn't simply spying on us or something. But then, in May of this year, see, 2018 was very stagnant, if you remember. And I think I made a couple of videos at the time saying, you know, this whole TTSA thing, it's a damn squib. It's going to lead nowhere. I mean, sure, I'm on there. I signed up for their email list. I receive all their merchandise adverts and things like that. But apart from that, what are they doing? You know, Joe Rogan hosted Tom DeLonge. He was talking about, oh yeah, we're developing anti-gravity craft and things like that. And it just all sort of like fizzled out. But then, my goodness me, in 2019. It certainly came back with a vengeance, didn't it? I mean, in May it was revealed that ATTIP actually was real. Didn't confirm that Luis Elizondo was a part of it. The government simply admitted that ATTIP had been a real UFO investigation program. It had run from 2007 to 2012. It had been funded with $22 million. So it was. It's amazing how much governments will spend on things which don't exist, isn't it? And so that was quite a sensational development. It really, really was. Then, well, just last Tuesday, suddenly something else was revealed. Now, again, all this stuff had been published by TTSA, including the Tic Tac footage, all this material that came from supposedly came from the US Navy. Of air wing, the air arm, what they call it, the US Navy air arm, whatever they call it. It came from them, and the pilots David Fravor and some of the witnesses from the USS Princeton and people like that. They were on TV saying how they'd been involved and they'd seen it, and they said, well, we got nothing like that, it just shot away really fast. There's no aircraft I know of that can do that. You know all that? There was always this kind of question that maybe that they were just pulling a fast one. I mean, it couldn't be ruled out, as Nick Pope would say. But then the government have finally admitted, a guy called Joseph Gradisher, a spokesman for the US Navy, actually came forward and said that that footage that TTSA published was official Pentagon footage. It was from the US Department of Defense. It's interesting that, I mean, it was unclassified, but it's like, it's really amazing actually, because John Greenwald, the Black Vault, if you watch his channel, it's very good. Now he's very cautious, as you know from previous videos in this series, I've talked about him before. But he's always been very cautious about TTSA and ATTIP. But he's been very impressed by this. I mean, he made the point that the official pronouncement on the footage specifically said that these were designated unidentified aerial phenomena, at UAP. This little buzzword that they use. I'll say a bit more about code words later. But I don't know exactly what, my goodness me, what actually was happening. I mean, what was going on? But it's like, wow. In a sense, this does answer a lot of the questions that we were asking about the validity of this. It has not answered every question. There's still an awful lot. There's still an awful lot about things to talk about. There's certainly a massive amount of questions remaining, and we must not let our guard down against disinformation. It's important to strike a balance here, because there's a lot of it's quite fashionable to be one of these kind of I can see through the disinformation but you can't posers. It's almost like it's a badge of honour now. The more cynical and pessimistic you can be, you get like a badge of honour saying, I disbelieve in everything said by anyone, and these dupes around me don't. How superior am I? Yeah. It's that kind of attitude I think is very prevalent, unfortunately, in ufology. So, but at the same time, we got to be, they do, the governments do lie. Governments spread disinformation. They withhold from us and they put out false information. They cover up and they muddle up, as Andrew Johnson says. But there's no doubt, you see, unlike people like some of these some of the Mark Pilkington people like that who say, oh, it's all a hoax from start to finish, everything. They don't create disinformation for nothing. It's not done for no purpose at all. It's a fog bank, but somewhere within this fog bank is something solid. There's no doubt about it. Oh, I don't know. I mean, it's really quite exciting. When this thing broke on Tuesday, I thought, well, how the hell did this happen? I mean, how the hell does this? Because this material is not authorised for release. these videos that came out, which TTSA published, which then we've followed up by David Fravor's testimony. That was never meant to happen. So what was it? What's the possibilities? Well, of course, the disinfo posers will go, it's disinformation. Right? Yeah. Right. Okay. We know how. All right. Get your back slapping over with, guys. We know how much more worldly wise you are than I am. Okay. But I don't think that's the case at all. My best guess is that it's an accidental leak. That's my best guess. However, I mean, there's a part of me that hopes this. I do hope that... I don't know, but it'd be nice if there was someone on the inside, right, who's kind of on our side. There's someone inside the Department of Defense in the United States who was really one of us but didn't want to say anything. So they somehow wangled this material out into the public domain. They worked to rule, or something like that. I do hope that's the case. Anyway, we'll be in a little while. I'll be bringing on Stephen Bassett. Now, I'm actually going to interview Stephen Bassett, which is really, really good. He's agreed to come on the show again, which is, I say again because this is going to be on Hapanwo Radio too. This is actually the first time the second time I've had him on Hapanwo TV, and it's really, really great. It's a great honour to have Steve Bassett on. He's an ex-political activist, he's a lobbyist, and he's executive director of the Paradigm Research Group. He's made it his life's work to get this sort of thing out into the open. First of all, though, I'm going to go through. There's a little bit more I need to talk about. We've got some more UFO and exopolitical news that has emerged since the last UFO disclosure video. As I said, we're living in exciting times when it comes to the UFO phenomenon at the moment. It does feel like we're moving towards something. It really, really does. And this, of course, I'll leave aside Storm Area 51 because I've done an entire live stream on about it last Friday. You can go and watch the recording of that. I put a link in the description box to that. But there's some other things have happened as well. For example, this is a couple of British cases actually. A mystery object has appeared over Plymouth in the sort of Devon Cornwall area. This is very strange. Now there's some photographs that emerge showing a brightly lit object in the sky. It looks kind of structured though. It does appear sort of cigar shaped. There's two photos of it that I've seen and they both show what looks like a structured cigar shaped object, although it's luminous. But the story that's been put out by the media is that the authorities that said that it was a meteor. The police first said it was a meteor, just a meteor. What I saw photographed doesn't look like a meteor. As I say, it's a structured cigar-shaped craft. It's small in the photographs. It's brightly lit, but it's not a meteor. Meteors are very difficult to photograph, actually. So it's not that. Then the police sent out search patrols, helicopters and things like that, because they thought a plane might have crashed. So there was a lot of reports. First of all, there was lots of reports of seeing strange lights in the sky. The police were inundated with phone calls. There was a lot of talk online about it. Photographs published. It was in the Metro and other newspapers the next day. Then there was people reporting massive activity of the helicopters. There's police helicopters. Well, I wondered. What I did was I put out an appeal. I did it on the Hapanmo Voice blog and on Hapanmo Radio. I said, if anyone lives in that area, could they please get in touch if they have seen anything, especially if there has been anything, for example, such as road closures, mysterious road closures, such as some areas of the countryside sealed off by police or military roadblocks, no explanation given, or some cock and bull story like weather balloons and things like that, and all kinds of, you know the usual thing. And it could be that the helicopter plane crash could be one of the things used, but I believe that was what was used in Nottingham, in the Nottinghamshire as well. And I also asked them to monitor air traffic if there was continued helicopter activity, for example, after the all clear had been given about it being a plane crash, because the police did say they couldn't find the wreckage of any planes. Also the presence of military personnel, aircraft, lorries, other vehicles in the area. An unusual rise in the presence of military personnel. That's another thing to look out for. And there's not many military bases around there. I think there's the Royal Navy Training Centre at Tor Point. That's the only one I'm familiar with. But I said, so I was writing to people in the sort of Devon Cornwall area, asking them about that, and I had 2 responses from people. I was very, very impressed. 2 people emailed me and they told me what they'd seen, and it appears there is something strange going on. They didn't report any roadblocks or anything sealed off, because obviously you know where I'm leading with this. I'm asking the question, is it a UFO crash? Are we looking at another Roswell? No one's noticed that, but they have said that the aircraft activity in the area has continued. That has continued, and they do believe there's an increased police presence on the ground. I mean, I don't know what will happen. I mean, I'm in touch with these people. If any more information comes to light, I will probably publish, maybe make a video or do a Hapanmo Voice article about it on that's the Hapanmo Voice blog. And if necessary, I will get the time and money together, and I will go on a trip to the area. I'll visit the area to do some investigation myself. And yes, I'll be sure to take my trusty Hapanmo TV camera with me, so you will be getting Hapanmo TV footage of that. Again, that's an open case. Now, another interesting sort of case. I think this, I sort of went through this and I'm not sure whether it's actually significant or worth reporting, but I'm going to report it anyway just in case. There's been another Gatwick drone incident. Now, if you remember a few months ago I did my Gatwick drone series. I think I did 4 of those, didn't I? 3 or 4, about the fact that Gatwick Airport, one of the world's busiest airports, was shut down. It was shut down by people supposedly flying drones around the area, although, as you know from watching those videos, and I went to the airport myself and checked it out, but as you know from those videos, you'll know that we've got reason to be doubtful that that even happened. We've got reasonably doubtful that no one was ever caught. There was a man arrested, but he was released without charge, and he's actually suing for wrongful arrest. Every last penny, mate. Just take them to the cleaners. Their names were put in the media and everything like that, so they were defamed. Also, no one was ever caught. There's no evidence that any drones were spotted. A few photographs of drones were spotted. Despite all the powers of the state, the police anti-drone squad turning up, millions of pounds being spent, no drones were ever found or shot down, and no people were ever arrested. No drone controllers were ever arrested. So, what I think might have happened, Ian R. Crane has talked about this, is that the air traffic control, there's a massive air traffic control breakdown, basically, an electronic cock-up, which would have involved 180,000 people being liable for compensation and a refund of their fares. Now the government, they didn't want to fork that out. You see, the airline industry didn't really want to fork out that kind of money, so they just said it was a drone, which is basically an act of God, essentially, in legal terms, which means they're not liable. Just bad luck, mate. The drones happen to fly around. Not our fault. I'm afraid we don't owe you a penny. Anyway, there's been another drone incident. Now, what happened was an A320 airliner. We don't know which airline. There are 3 airlines that operate out of Gatwick which use that. And there's British Airways, EasyJet, and Ryanair, I think. They all operate A320s. This had to take emergency evasive action at 1,700 feet within minutes of landing at Gatwick's single runway. This has been classified by the Air Safety Board as a near miss. That's the highest, most serious element apart from an actual collision. So I don't know. I got a feeling this is probably a real drone, actually, simply because I think it's a real drone simply because there was no disruption. It's possibly, I mean, there's very strict, it's a no-fly zone over the airport, of course, and drones are not permitted to fly above 400 feet in altitude by law under drone regulations. So it's being developed an illegal drone operator. There's been no update or whether they caught anyone, but the lack of disruption means it's probably not like an electronic breakdown in air traffic control again, like it was last time, I believe. It's possible we're looking at another UFO event. I mean, there have been several actual UFO events reported by the Air Safety Board, including one which was openly discussed as a silver egg-shaped object a few years ago. I wrote an article in a Panmo Voice about that. I'm wondering if the word drone actually has even been turned into code for UFOs, and we know this happens with other agencies. I mean, I've already discussed the US Department of Defense use of the term UAP, unidentified aerial phenomenon, which seems to be official now. I mean, the term UFO, of course, unidentified flying object, has an awful lot of cultural baggage, shall we say, yes. Isn't that right, Russell? Yeah, Russell knows all about that. It's associated with him and things like him, and people like me, of course. But UAP is like a code word. Maybe drone has been used as a code. I mean, this has come out about other things as well, like NASA using the term fast walkers for UAP UFOs. Indeed, there's a very good documentary called Fast Walkers, which discusses UFO sightings in space. It's very interesting. So, unless there's an update on that, I'm going to have to conclude. I'll have to call drone on that, and it's not ufological. But I thought it was worth mentioning anyway. And as I said, I did write an article on the Panmo Voice blog about that. Plenty of dragon juice this evening. Now, there's another interesting thing. Old Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders is a weird character because he's like, even by British standards, in terms of successful British politicians, he's very left-wing. Now, in American terms, he's literally Fidel Castro. I mean, for a guy with his kind of views to get to the position he has where he can run for president in the Democratic Party is almost unknown. But he managed it. And I mean, whatever you think of him, I mean, I don't agree with him politically, but he was treated like dirt. He was treated like dirt by the Democratic Party. At the Democratic National Convention, you know, they basically, thanks to Hillary Clinton and her cohorts, basically screwed him. They wrongfully terminated his run for presidency, effectively. They should go to jail for that. That's a corruption of the political process. It's worse than bloody Brexit. Yet they did it. And then the old fool went and endorsed Hillary Clinton, didn't he? Oh God, that was awful. It must have been pretty awful for the people who supported him as well, and the people who donated $255 million to his campaign. I endorse Hillary Clinton. Oh God. Funny thing about Bernie Sanders is I know his brother. His brother Larry is a councillor here in Oxford. He actually is. He's on the council for the Green Party here. I forgot what ward he's on. But I used to know him a lot better because, I mean, this is embarrassing, but I used to be a trade unionist. I was actually very left wing when I first started out at the hospital, and I was a trade unionist. And I knew Larry Sanders because he used to turn up at all the left wing events, and I used to go out with him on various leafleting, picketing, flyer dropping, and things like that. And so he was all right. I mean, I didn't have a problem with him. Of course, I do have a problem with him politically now, of course, but personally, I don't mind the guy. I mean, you'll be glad to know, and it's obvious you'll know that I didn't stay a trade unionist for very long. In fact, I think I was probably only hardcore for less than a year. I saw through it very quickly, luckily, at a young age. Others don't. I mean, obviously, Larry himself hasn't seen through it, which is a shame. But anyway, I also went to school with Larry's daughter, who is Bernie's niece. I've not seen her for years, so I don't know what kind of person she is. I mean, she'd be sort of middle-aged now. I remember her as a very aloof and very arrogant girl, very unpleasant. I'm stuck up. She used to talk down to me. That's how I remember her. And I mean, if she's watching and she's changed and she's not like that now, then I apologise. As I said, I've not seen her since we were both about 16. So obviously, people can be little bastards when they're young, and maybe she's changed. In which case, I apologise to her. But I didn't like her. I didn't like her at all. Now, Bernie Sanders was on the Joe Rogan Experience. Yeah, it was like, and he was talking to Joe. I mean, I love the Joe Rogan show. I love it. I mean, of course it was Joe Rogan who inspired Matty Roberts to do Storm Area 51, the show he did with Bob Lazar and Annie Jacobson, like I said. He does this interview with Bernie Sanders, and the subject of UFOs come up. I think he's trying to do a Jimmy Kimmel and ask everyone that. Oh, if only you get Trump on. But he said, Joe says, Bernie, he said, you're president, right? You look into the UFO subject, and whatever you knew, you tell us, wouldn't you, Bernie? And he says, absolutely I would. My wife would demand that I let you know. So his wife, the First Lady, supposing Bernie became president, would let everyone know. Oh, goodness me. Make sure he knew. The thing is, it wouldn't be her decision, and also it wouldn't be Bernie's. And Bernie actually said that he doesn't have access to those sorts of records, and it doesn't surprise me. Because, you see, the thing is, I don't think Bernie Sanders, if somehow by some miracle he became president, which is virtually impossible anyway, I think he'd be handled. He'd just simply be a president you handle and you don't tell. That the deep state would simply have him there as a sort of figurehead. Well, they did to many others. They did that to Clinton. I think they did that with Ronald Reagan. There were some certain presidents I think are in the know and have real power. Others are just sort of like, they're just like guys who sit on the front desk, really. Reagan was one of those. Ronald Reagan was one of those. Bill Clinton was one of those. And I think Bernie Sanders would be one of those if somehow he became president. I mean, I prefer to see him as president than, say, Joe Biden or Hillary Clinton or these other, Alexandria, occasionally courteous or whatever her name is. I can't stand her. Horrid little squit. And those other ones that Trump's told to go home. Yeah, I mean, I know that they are American and they can't go home because that's their country too, but I still had a laugh when Trump said that because, all right, they're just horrible people. They're just really mean and nasty, and, you know. So I'd rather see Bernie Sanders as president than those two, than those group of people. Joe Biden, of course, is another slimy little guy who's often photographed with his arms around girls and things like that. Blech. So, from what we know about Bernie Sanders, his personal, professional and political background, I don't think he would be given the keys to the underground bases. I don't think he would. I really don't. I think the deep state would deliberately leave him out of it all. Because we have a US presidential election next year, I do think, I mean, I'll say more about the time, but ideally I think it would be best if Trump wins. I mean, even if you don't think Trump's a pretty good, is a decent guy, you must see what the alternatives are from the other side, from the Democratic side. I can't say I'm an expert on US politics. I'm British, I'm looking at it from the other side of the Atlantic, but just look at what else is on the menu, guys. Come on, even if you're a Democrat voter normally, do you really think these people will be better than Trump? I know many would agree, including the guest that's coming up, I'm sure. The guy who's... I'm going to come now to the highlight of this particular video. It's my interview with Stephen Bassett. Yeah, this is a real honour because I really like Steve. I've interviewed him a couple of times, mostly on Herpanwo Radio. It's great to welcome him back to Herpanwo TV. He's a great ex-politician. He's an activist and lobbyist. You often see him sort of hanging around in Washington DC, talking to various people, setting up meetings, arranging summits and committees and things like that to try and raise the profile of the advocacy process for the ending of the truth embargo. And the disclosure with a capital D, the frank, full acknowledgement that there is an extraterrestrial presence engaging the human race. And of course there is that presence. And what's more, the government know about it, and we need to know. And that's what Steve has dedicated his life to doing. And so it's a great pleasure to introduce you to Stephen Bassett once again, to have him back on the programme to talk about everything that's been happening all through the last few years, and especially through the last week. So, hope you enjoy it. Well, Steve Bassett, hello, how are you?
Ben, it's nice to see you again.
You too. It's good to see you again, mate. How you been getting on?
Not too bad. It's been an interesting, very interesting times here in the U.S. Of course, you're having some interesting times in the U.K.
Yeah.
As a political activist, it's pretty entertaining and keeping me quite busy.
Oh, it's never, whatever else it might be, terrifying, miserable, but it's never boring. Never boring, no. That's for certain.
Exactly.
Now, oh yeah, I mean, it's been a while since you were on the programme last, and a lot's happened since then. I mean, of course, we had this amazing revelation from the To the Stars Academy in December 2017, and it feels as if that whole situation is now coming of age, because in May it was announced that the Advanced Aerial, ATTIP, oh, I've forgotten what it's called.
Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program.
That's it, yeah, damn, I forget that, yeah. That was real, it turns out that was real, and in the last week, it's got really exciting, hasn't it?
There is a sequence of events that has taken place which are part of a very orchestrated process, which has changed the disclosure process profoundly. First, there was the extraordinary coverage of Hillary Clinton's ET connection to the subject, and her husband's connection, and John Podesta's connection, all throughout the 2016 presidential election. This went on for 2 years. And then there was an indication that something was happening inside the Pentagon, some sort of project was being put together, and we got the first hint of that from Tom DeLonge, a musician and very eager extraterrestrial phenomena researcher and so forth. that he was meeting with people in the Pentagon. Specifics were not provided, but it was apparently a very big deal. That was in March of 2016. The election took place. We know how that came out. And about 10 months after the election was over, this project that DeLong had referred to in March of 2016 was launched on October the 11th, 2017. It's called To the Stars Academy of Arts and Science, a rather interesting name. Tom DeLong is the CEO. And their website announced 10 very high-level former top researchers, intel people from within the military intelligence complex, literally across the board, including the Lockheed, CIA, the DOD, political committees on the Hill, and so forth. This is a very powerful group of individuals that started this group, along with DeLong, raised about $2.5 million and announced they were going to look into the range of subject matter associated with the extraterrestrial issue. This was a big deal, fine, but nothing compared to what happened next. Then they provided interviews to the New York Times with substantial new information, as well as some extraordinary gun camera footage from 3 Navy planes off of carrier groups. The New York Times vetted all of this information and then published it on December the 16th, 2017. 2 articles where they announced the reality of a program studying the phenomena called ATTIP, which you mentioned, led by Luis Elizondo. They announced that Senator Harry Reid, the Senate Majority Leader at the time, was the one that convinced the Pentagon to do this, that Bob Bigelow had encouraged Reid to do this. Bigelow, of course, is the aerospace billionaire. It was acknowledged that Bigelow had also done some of the research for the ATTIP program at his aerospace facility.
Physical evidence, wasn't
it? Yes, and then they gave to the New York Times 3 gun camera footage clips, the first ever released by any government in the world, right, of intercepts of UAPs by defense planes. And these were then put up on the New York Times website and have been seen all over the world by tens and tens and tens of millions of people. The most important clip was from an event in 2004, the Nimitz Carrier Group event, southwest of San Diego, where for days they were tracking unidentified aerial phenomena of extraordinary capability from the carrier communication ship and high-tech surveillance ship, the Princeton. When the carrier arrived, the Nimitz, they launched F-18s to go and look at these. And then another group of planes were launched that actually did forward-looking infrared radar on these objects. And that was the footage, the gun camera footage, I guess you could say the FLIR radar footage, that was provided to the New York Times on this event. Extraordinary event involving a 30 to 40 foot object capable of doing things that no technology known on Earth can do. This was a big deal. And only the extraordinary political circumstances in the United States, which is absorbing the attention of everybody, the press, the media, other politicians, you name it, committees on the Hill, that would have been one of the major stories of the 21st century. So that took place. But nevertheless, what we have seen since the release of that footage is a change in attitude and certain adjustments being made within certain elements of the government.
Definitely. And in the media too.
Yeah, the media as well. Huge amount of coverage, no question. Hundreds and hundreds of articles, all archived on my website.
I never seen anything like it. It's amazing.
So one of the first things we saw was the Navy took some other interesting steps. Now, why the Navy? The Nimitz event was a Navy aircraft carrier. And when the articles were written, published in the New York Times, essentially it outed the Navy and this incident, which the Navy had been sitting on for 13 years and had encouraged people and discouraged people from talking about it, put classified status on it, and just wouldn't talk about it for 13 years. Now that makes them look a little, how would you say, awkward, and it created a PR problem for them. And so the Navy, to its great credit, responded by taking some measures. First, they announced that they were changing the protocols on how pilots could report and encouraging pilots to report these sightings. Then they announced that they announced that change in protocols in receiving these reports, which was favorable. Then they announced that they're encouraging the pilots to go ahead and report these sightings. And then, just recently, they did something even more significant. They confirmed that this gun camera footage from the Nimitz, from the Franklin Delano Roosevelt, and the other were in fact gun camera footage, infrared, forward-looking radar from Navy planes, and they didn't authorize it. That's a very significant thing.
That I think is the most significant breakthrough we've had in this saga, because there's always a feeling at the back of a lot of people's heads, and indeed several researchers voiced this, that this was some kind of massive hoax. And now it's been confirmed that this is actually an official US Navy thing. And as you said, it was not authorized for release, but
which is notable, because in other words, what we can take from that is that the Department of Defense doesn't need the Navy's authorization to release or declassify something. It would be a courtesy to let them know that they were going to do it. But I don't think they let them know. Probably because if they had let them know, the Navy would have said, don't do this. And they would have said, well, we're going to do it anyway. And that would have been a loss of face. So I don't think they even informed them. But eventually, of course, it came out. And what the Navy is saying is, look, it was released. It's authentic. We didn't authorize it. And they put some distance between them and that authorization. It was done by the Department of Defense, specifically for Louis Elizondo and to the Stars Academy. It wasn't like they just declassified 3 gun camera footages and they were lying on a desk somewhere and Lou picked them up while on his way to lunch. They were done specifically so they could have them. Who was able to effectuate this declassification? We don't know. How high the authority is protecting them inside the DoD? We don't know. But they've got it. They've got backup that is protecting them from those within the military intelligence complex who would oppose what they're doing. So this is very significant. Plus, we're seeing some witnesses turn up. We're seeing some documents suddenly turn up. Dr. Eric Davis's notes from the very important and well-known Admiral Wilson meeting between Admiral Wilson and the Pentagon way back. I forget the year.
2002.
In 2002.
Yeah.
And Edgar Mitchell and Stephen Greer, which had been debunked, and people had tried to debunk it and said it wasn't true. Well, the notes came out. These are, and then other developments. The To the Stars Academy group started going up on the Hill and doing what you would call lobbying. They're meeting with members of committees. They're meeting with members of Congress, Senate, and House. Now, they're not saying who, except we're finding out through the usual kind of leaks, or what the exact topics are. We know they've met with a very important Senator Mark Warner, and the Senator Jeanne Shaheen, and then I believe Representative Amy Barra. These are all Democrats, interestingly enough, and also recently Mark Walker. Mark Walker. One of the reasons we know that he met with them is that he was motivated enough to send a letter to the Pentagon wanting to know why they aren't doing more about this. That letter went public pretty quickly. So again, if it wasn't for the political drama we're dealing with in the U.S., and I think it's the same thing in the U.K. I imagine the Brexit controversy and crisis has shoved a lot of stuff off the table that probably would be important to deal with.
Oh, very much so. It's completely taken over everything, really. Although
it's the problem here.
It hasn't completely swamped any interest in this particular subject, especially seeing as there's a lot of people already interested in it. And the very fact that it seems that the strategy for dealing with this subject within the media has completely changed. The original Robertson panel advice seems to have gone out the window. It's really quite remarkable.
The media has been contained by the truth embargo, meaning that the government denies there's anything going on, and the media doesn't want to spend its days constantly telling the government it's lying. And so they played ball and they've covered and they've done things, but they haven't gotten too rambunctious about it. They haven't gone deep. They haven't gone Woodward and Bernstein on it. Um, and, and without the government's confirmation, it's very awkward for the media to go to this issue. Of course, that was the whole purpose of the truth embargo, was to prevent media from getting this issue and prevent the researchers from giving credibility.
Yeah, official ridicule and denial.
So what's happened, though, is that the release of that gun camera footage, the confirmation of the study at the Pentagon, and these high-level people with security clearances now are not working directly for the government anymore, being part of a civilian group, and yet their credentials are all over the website, has given the press cover. In other words, the press can say, wow, I mean, there's totally appropriate for us to start looking into this, writing it up, because this is not coming from some extraterrestrial phenomena researcher in some basement somewhere, a fringe person. No, it's coming from people that worked in highly classified programs. And so what they've done is essentially given license to the media to finally do its job. And I assure you, the media is only beginning to do its job. And so from one perspective, I think we're walking to disclosure at this point. We're in the final months of it, of the truth embargo. From another perspective, and that's through the purely political prism, we're not sure where we are, because right now America is in a multi-constitutional crisis of unprecedented proportions. And until that crisis is resolved, this other major issue that needs to be addressed across the board by every agency of government is sort of stalled, and yet it's huge, right? It's like big but stalled.
It just really is. I know there's an awful lot going on at the moment, but I don't really see how what is coming out right now can be upstaged. I mean, at some point, it's people are going to look at it and understand. Enough people can look at it and understand the implications of it, which are extraordinary. And I don't think any sort of conventional scandal could actually knock that onto page 2 the way things are going. Well, I really don't see how that's possible.
Well, it has been knocked onto page 2
for now, but well, it's only Tuesday. Yeah. It actually emerged. I mean, Tuesday I think was the big day.
Only for so long. But this what we have going on right now is big. I know Brexit is big. This is bigger.
Yeah, it is.
And America is a powerful country with enormous impact on the economies of many countries. And so when we get the flu, the rest of the world gets pneumonia. And if we get pneumonia, the rest of the world gets the bubonic plague. So it's a big deal. And it is keeping this issue contained. Not deliberately, but it's contained. But I assure you, there are a lot of media. Look, a lot of people in media, both print and television, have known the ET issue is real for a long time. That doesn't mean they can cover it. Doesn't mean they can do journalism on it. But as they're starting to get the license to go into this, they're going to when they can. And the toothpaste is out of the tube. It can't be put back in. And so now it's just a question of how is this going to jog forward, right? And there's always a possibility that another nation, another head of state may see all this going on and say, well, enough of this. I'm going to go out and I'm going to tell my people that the ET presence is real, and we'll see what happens. That could take place at any time.
Exactly. I mean, this is the old disclosure issue about who would be the disclosure country and things like that. And sure. if one country doesn't get in there, someone else might, etc., etc. But I suppose what we have at the moment is it's only the start, really. I mean, the idea that there are unidentified objects operating on the Earth. I mean, and they've been recorded, and you have pilots and people like that speaking out about them. That's happened many, many times. Sure. The difference with this issue is there's evidence being gathered and evidence has been published. I know it was published independently through a civilian third party, the TTSA. We had David Fravor and the other pilots speaking out, and everyone said, well, are they being honest? And now we have it confirmed. What was originally published almost 2 years ago, originally, has now been confirmed. And I mean, this is going to, it's answered some questions, but it's going to make people ask a lot more. People are going to say, well, what about all the other things? What about Roswell, etc., etc.?
There's so much evidence, Ben. It's been piling up for 70
Yeah.
years. There's a certain something that sort of amuses me about what's happening is that for decades and decades, the researchers would gather up the sighting reports, do all the work, the legwork, photography analysis, and so forth, witness testimonies. And of course, the media would and others would debunk it and criticize it and push back at it, throwing whatever they could at it to make it go away. Well, now the table is turned, and the government is trying to get information out, as is trying to catch up on this issue before it takes them over. And the people in the Extraterrestrial Phenomena Research Access Committee, they're trying to debunk it. They're trying to deny it. They're pushing back at it. They're treating this information the way their information was treated. Now it's kind of a trade-off. It's a certain amount of revenge going on here, and it's appropriate that what the government says on the subject be scrutinized intensely. I happen to think that some of the scrutiny has not been, how would you say, of the best quality. Some of it's been pretty flimsy, and some of it's been outright preposterous.
Well, it seems to be there's a climate of, I think, maybe there's certain people I think who are excessively suspicious, and I think they just immediately, instinctively say the whole thing is a sham.
But that's not the way to act. That's not the way to be suspicious. To be suspicious is to say what's going on here. Let's look at it, not to just say, well, it's all a sham. I mean, that's not constructive, and that doesn't take you anywhere. But there is analysis going on, and they're trying to find holes in the narrative, and they're trying to find mistakes that witnesses make. And I think that's going to go on for a while because, hey, the government did that to us for a very, very long time, and the academics did it to us, and so many of the journalists did it. It wasn't rational. It was based upon a political reality. The government of the United States, which has nuclear weapons and a very large army, was telling the media and the academics and any of the public that would listen, there's no there there. All of the stuff these people are talking about is in fact bogus. And that is interference in not only the truth process, but the people's right to know process. And nothing good comes from that. It's happened before, and the U.S. has paid a price to a certain degree. But the United States government has not just lied on this issue. It's lied on many things, which is why the distrust level is so high, and why anybody coming forward on major issues now out of the government, whatever their intentions, however good they are, need to understand that they are dealing with a public that has lost trust and faith in the government that they work for, and they're going to have to work overtime to convince us that now you're telling us the truth, which we want you to do. In other words, tell us the truth, convince us you're telling the truth, so we can begin trusting you again.
It's going to be an uphill struggle for them, definitely. And I mean, I myself, when I first heard this in December, I mean, I'm not one of these, I can see through the disinformation, but you can't posers. But when I first saw what was happening at TTSA, I saw Hal Puthoff there, a guy who's worked in psychological warfare and remote viewing, which is very interesting in itself. I thought to myself, is this some kind of trick? And if it's a trick, what's it a trick for? I mean, obviously they don't do these things for nothing. And then when 2018, it all went very quiet in 2018, if you remember. I mean, I got the merchandise emails from TTSA, but apart from that, I didn't hear a thing from them. And in 2019, it's just exploded.
Well, they were, again, the political crisis in the United States deepened in 2018. It didn't get better, it got worse. And the worse it got, the more difficult it was for them to maneuver. So what they did is they really went into the background. They worked on their documentary series Unidentified. That had been filmed, a lot of filming had been done in during the creation of this organization. They were able to put together a 6-part series. That was helpful.
It's just launched over here, actually. It's just launched on TV over here, which is quite good.
Yeah, caught up with the UK. And then they went up on the Hill for these private meetings. So they've been working behind the scenes while the huge political crisis is out there in front of everybody. So it's not that things haven't happened. It's just it hasn't been so much public. I expect them to start going public again pretty soon. There's been some rumors that some things are going to happen. And one of those might have been the Navy confirming the gun camera footage videos, but I think there's more to come. And again, from one perspective, one point of view, we are in the last days of the 72-year-old truth embargo.
Yeah, it's a kind of it's a strange business because everything seems to be happening at once. These are from very often from independent sources. For example, you mentioned Eric Davis. Now his recording of the interview he did with the meeting he had with Admiral Wilson, a 70-minute interview at the back of a car. That came independently. That was from the notes of Dr. Edgar Mitchell, just founded by a guy in Australia who actually published it. But that emerged at the same time. I mean, it all suddenly appeared at about the same time. And it talks about the guy, Admiral Wilson, who was, he said some very revealing things about the military-industrial complex.
There's a lot of interest. People need to go and read those notes. You can find them. Just Dr. Eric Davis notes will get it to you right there. Wilson was asked by Mitchell and Greer to look into some USAPs, unidentified special access program, because they believe they existed, and they asked him to check into them. And Wilson did, and he came back and said, they exist, and I'm mad as hell because they said I don't have access to them.
Yeah, Deputy Director of Intelligence, wasn't he?
Yeah, and so
was there Joint Chiefs of Staff? He's a Deputy Director of Intelligence. Now, if he doesn't know, he thought he was at the top of the pile, didn't he?
A lot of people think they're at the top of the pile.
That's how you shoot that. It's his job.
There's a lot of people working in the House of State, I guess you could say, that know that there's like a 20-level basement, 20-layer basement underneath the House of State, and they know there's stuff going on down there, but they don't have the key to the cellar door. And they've just accepted that, and God knows what's going on down there. But I'll tell you, there's a lot of people that are concerned that we need to get down there and find out.
Because a lot of the people who see this in the news are going to start thinking now. People who previously maybe never had any interest in UFOs are now going to see this in the news, and they're going to think, well, what about Roswell? What about the stuff in the basement, the 20-level basement? And the fact that the guys who are supposedly in charge within the open government actually are not. They can be bossed, they can be ordered and be told it's nothing to do with you. And these unknown guys in dark suits who work for these various companies who have names that Admiral Wilson never heard of, they're the guys who seem to be running the show. And that, I think that's going to frighten a lot of people, but at the same time, it should galvanize a lot of people into action, and it might even act as a catalyst to healing the political crises that your country and my country are currently suffering. I think if people look at it from a bigger picture, it might help them find a solution.
I've always said that disclosure could be the door to a reformist movement that could fix a great deal of our most significant dysfunctions. It's such a paradigm shift, and when you have a huge change, it's like when you make a big move from one house to another. You take advantage of that often to clean out a bunch of stuff that you don't need anymore, organize some things that need to be organized, clean things up a little bit, and then you start fresh in that new house. Well, we're going from one paradigm to another, and we're going to have the opportunity to clean up some programs, reform some serious dysfunctions, eliminate some things that simply shouldn't be hanging around anymore, institute new protocols, agencies, and so forth, and get it right in the post-disclosure world. That is my hope. That is why I do what I do. I already know there's ETs here, so having the president announce it is not exactly going to be an overwhelming thing. But the fact that that announcement opens the door to the post-disclosure world, that's overwhelming. And that's what I'm looking forward to.
It'd be quite amazing when you think about it. I mean, that Trump would be the disclosure president.
That is a possibility.
Yeah. And I'm not teasing you, Steve. I know I'm not teasing you, because I know we sort of had a bit of a disagreement about this a couple of years ago. But wouldn't it would be a turn up for the books, wouldn't it? I mean, because everyone thinks
not out of the question, but there will be consequences. Whoever is the disclosure president or head of state the nature of the post-disclosure world will be the first one to go, will have more, I think, influence on a lot of extra influence and prestige. And the way things turn out will be a little bit different. Each country has their own agendas. But fact is that once an announcement is made by one country, other countries will follow very quickly. But whoever is the president of the United States in the post-disclosure world is going to have the ability to influence this transition, this paradigm shift, to a significant degree. And so let's just say that the heads of state on the day of the confirmation of the extraterrestrial presence, whoever they are, will be facing perhaps the most challenging, complicated, implicative, profound set of issues, concerns than any head of state has ever faced in the history of the human race on that day. And so we would like, it would be helpful if these heads of state were as competent, as sharp, as intelligent, as experienced as possible. Just like you want your most experienced pilots in the #1 seat of your 747. You don't put rookies in there. You don't put amateurs in there. This is 10 times more relevant than that. What's the current state of the heads of state around the world? It varies. There's some areas of powerful leadership and competence. There's some areas of complete chaos and confusion. It is what it is. Collectively, is it any worse than it has been 10 years ago, 50 years ago? Hard to say. But nevertheless, who is the disclosure president is non-trivial and is something that I think about every day.
Yeah, I mean, Richard Dolan was in an interview he recently did. He just was saying that someone said, "Are we ready for disclosure?" And he says, "No." I says, "No, we'll never be ready for disclosure, but it has to happen."
Yeah.
And
it's not about whether we're ready or not. It's never been about we're ready or not. It's like, are you ready to be born? Right? Yeah. No, you get born. Right? Yeah. If you live, great, you have a life. Were you ready for World War II, World War I? No. So this idea that people have to be ready for stuff before it happens is utter nonsense. Right? Things happen. Now, it's helpful if they have a little foreknowledge. It's helpful if there's a bit of a learning curve.
That's what you and I have been trying to provide.
Yeah, there's been a 72-year learning curve here. The American people, and I think a good deal of the developed world, the citizens, have been going to the school on this subject for 7 decades, my entire lifetime. So this idea, well, are you ready yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet? This is simple-minded stuff. This kind of, it's like somebody announces tomorrow there's a meteor the size of Everest heading for the Earth, and it's going to hit us in 7 months. And somebody raises their hand and says, I don't think that should be allowed to happen, because I don't think we're ready for a meteor the size of Everest to hit the planet Earth. And the universe just laughs its head off. Right? Yeah. History is powerful. It's huge forces moving forward. It's not necessarily democratic. Things happen, right? And this idea that, well, we must be ready for it. Well, unfortunately, that's not the way the world works. And in smaller areas, to lesser degree, in smaller subsets, yeah, we can be ready for things, and you want to be. But the idea that massive were we ready for the atomic physics, the cracking of the atom? Were we ready for special relativity? Did Einstein sent out a bunch of letters to people saying, "Are you ready for a new theory of physics?" And they were going to say, "No, we're comfortable with what we have." No, right? So people need to buck up and get ready, right? I mean, get ready, not are you ready, but get ready, because it's coming whether you like it or not.
And what you said about the kind of people that, for example, in positions of authority in the world, the phrase "cometh the hour, cometh the man." It's from the Bible, I know, but it's been used in a secular context as well to refer to the fact that when a situation arises, a person who can handle it will naturally, through the normal political process, rise into a position where he can handle it. That's in a democratic world or in a functional world that would happen. So I can only hope that will happen.
I'm aware of that concept. I think I think it applies more as you go back in time. The world now is so much more complicated. I mean, than the time of, say, the Old Testament or even the 17th century. It's massively complicated and fast moving. It's boom, 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 boom. And so this idea that, well, all this stuff is happening and then somebody just sort of emerges, right, to be able to handle it all. No one person can handle it all. This idea that you have the messianic leader that takes the world to a great place or a country to a great place, this is becoming less and less the case because the nature of governance in this world is so vast and so complicated that you need a whole significant group and team of very, very sharp people working in concert to be able to try to manage the flow of events in history. And you also need a bunch of supercomputers. So it doesn't quite work that way, but people are inclined that way. Whatever problems they have, they're looking for a singular person to come forward and solve it. And that is a ruse. It is a con, right? And it has been for a long time now. Anybody that says, I can fix it all, is deluded. And people that are looking for somebody to fix it all are deluded. And that's not a good place to be if you want to get by in a world this complicated.
But it could lead to sort of personality cults. And we've seen this many, many times throughout history in terms of Hitler, etc., or Stalin, and the leaders of North Korea, for example, who were essentially they were regarded as demigods on Earth, and they were getting in a position where they essentially almost hypnotized their population, and that's always a risk.
It's getting a little harder because the media and the internet has created such a vast stream of information of all types, pro, con, right, wrong, moving all the time. It's getting a little harder for a single person to mesmerize enough people, but I'm not saying it can't be done. It's just getting harder and harder. What you're seeing is large groups of people, whole teams of IT and or computer jockeys working in large facilities, literally trying to jam ideas into the social media and affect people, affect how they vote, how they think. That's whole teams of people having to do this.
There's like Cambridge Analytica and things like that.
Yeah, right. And in most cases, the heads of state of countries, they have no idea how a computer even works. So that's going to be changing too. Some of this is for the better, some of this is for the worse. Again, were we ready for the internet? Did they send out a 5-year notice ahead of time and say, look, we think we may be able to create the internet in about 5 years. If you're not ready for it, we'll just wait until you are. No.
Yeah.
Right? Did Zuckerberg, check with all his classmates at Harvard and say, are you ready for MySpace or my Facebook, the Facebook? No, he just did it. And then it just goes boom. Were we ready for that? No. You go with the flow. Now, if we had better government, if we had more just and fair society, I think it would be easier for us to then take on these new amazing things that just hit us in the face like a pie and make them work. But no, we're operating from a space where everything new seems to just create more tension, more stress, more opioid use, more painkillers, more marriage failing. America right now has got to be the most stressed society the world's ever seen, based on just the statistics.
It does seem that way, yeah. We're not far behind you over here.
Yeah, I hope you don't follow us all the way down that road, but let me tell you, we're stressed out over here, Ben.
Oh, yeah, well, I notice it in London especially. I think people are really very, very tense and very uptight. But we can always let our hair down. I mean, there's certain things I think that are healthy symptoms. So you've been talking a lot about something on social media that I've been taking interest in too, and that is Storm Area 51. Now that is something quite remarkable, because when it first occurred, I had a laugh about it. I even clicked going just for fun. but it's actually happened now, and
it sort of happened. This is a product of the internet. Again, it's a product of a technology that didn't even exist that long ago. I refer you to a Korean, I think it's a South Korean rap group that put together a rap video, or a video, I forget what kind of music you call it, kind of gunman style, right? Who did they have any idea that when they put that up on YouTube that it would be the first video to get 1 billion views? I don't think so. Why? Who the hell knows? I listened to it. I thought it was kind of cool, but why did it go viral? In other words,
it's a tune you can dance to. It's got a good beat.
There's a million tunes you can dance to out there, Ben.
The lyrics in Korean,
right?
Yeah, the lyrics in Korean, I can't speak it, but it's still funny. It's got a good video, and yeah.
Well, it's got some stuff, but that doesn't understand. That does not explain 1 billion views. I don't know what is that now. It might be 1.5 billion. The point is that the nature, the social media space is almost like another dimension. We weren't there before, and suddenly we're there, and we don't really understand how it works and what the laws of physics are. We just know this is a special space, and exactly why this happens and not that, we're still figuring out. So, and one of the key concepts within this special new space is a term I call virality. What makes something go viral? What gives it virality? We're still trying to understand it, but every once in a while, we get a glimpse. Matty Roberts, this college student, I think he's in California, got a glimpse. He just put something. I put stuff up on the internet from time to time. I put out tweets, posts, whatever. He created an event, put it up on Facebook, and invited everybody to come and run through the gates at Area 51 at 3 a.m. in the morning on the 20th of September. Naruto style, which is with your hand behind you. It was a joke. He said it was a joke. It was a joke from the very beginning. It was just a fun thing. I could set up one tomorrow. I could set up a Facebook events page, inviting everybody who's a little bit, weirded out by what's going on in Washington to come to Washington, come to the White House, and throw firecrackers over the White House gate fences, right? 10 people might sign up and go. Everybody else see it crazy. But what if 4 million signed up and said, yeah, we like that idea. We're going to come down and throw firecrackers over the fence at the White House. All hell would break loose. So he puts up Storm Area 51, and ultimately I think over 3 million people either said they were coming or were interested. Yeah. And 98% of them had no intentions of actually going, but they signed it anyway. Why? Why did it make him famous all over the world? I'll tell you why. Because he tapped into the underground sensibilities of tens upon tens of millions of people, hundreds of millions of people regarding the ET issue, which is fundamentally suppressed. It is kept down by the government. And it's like hitting an area of oil in the ground, right? And boom, it just gushes until you hit a certain pocket. You got nothing, and then boom, it gushes. He tapped into that, and out came an enormous response. And that response was essentially this: yeah, we want the truth on this. We're tired of the lies. We're tired of the nonsense, the game playing, the kabuki theater. We're tired of all of that. We want the truth. And this is our way of saying that in a cool way. And it's kind of fun, right? It's more fun than signing one of those petition things. They're always turning up. And it's fast. Boom, you just go to the Facebook page and click I'm coming or I'm interested. No emails are required. You can do it anonymously, essentially. And so, boom, 4 million. Well, if I could put something up on the internet and get 4 million responses to it, my work would get a hell of a lot easier. And if I put it up in such a way that I captured the emails, which is what Tom Steyer did with his Impeach Donald Trump website, he's gotten 8 million people to give him their emails as part of signing his petition. That email list is invaluable. It is worth a fortune. So that's a form of virality, but nothing like what we saw with Matty Roberts and Storm Area 51, because he spent scores of millions of dollars to get those signups, to get those signatures and emails. Matty, all he did was put it up on Facebook and then go out and skateboard for a while, came back and saw there was 200,000 people signed up and said, uh-oh, what's going on? Now, I made clear it was a bad idea. A lot of other people did. We said, don't do this, don't go there. And we did what we could to sort of, a lot of people did what they could to
did.
And
well, I just said, don't try to invade Area 51 because the camo dudes there are armed, and it says use of deadly force. Yeah. I didn't want anyone to get hurt or killed. And
it wasn't just that. That's the 100-degree desert out. There's nothing there.
Oh yeah, 14 miles across the desert. Yeah, they'd have to run.
If people had shown up there, it would have been Burning Man without the infrastructure, without the city, without any money, without porta potties. It would have been a catastrophe. So so what happened was, eventually, rationality prevailed. Some step backs, attempt to create some music, try to make a positive out of it, and not a lot of time. And thankfully, when it was all said and done, nobody got arrested except 2 foreign kids, I think from Norway or something, a week before, just decided to get here early. But 100 people went out to the gate with costumes on and some signs and had a great time, and the guards probably had a great time. About 2,000 people showed up in Racial, which is not a good thing because Racial canceled their events. There was only 2 food trucks, I think, when they finally got there.
Well, they were very worried. The Lincoln County Council actually declared a state of emergency, not because of anything to do with aliens, but because if thousands of people turn up at Racial, apparently the petrol station, or the gas station as you call them in America, they wouldn't have enough petrol for them to drive home again.
Well, of course.
The thousands of people be stuck there.
And this didn't happen. There was another event put in Hyco, which is not as well known. Everybody knows about Racial, but most people never heard of Hyco. It's
alien stuff.
It's
alien stuff.
But only not too many people showed up for that, I believe. In fact, I saw a picture of like 80 porta potties just standing there completely in the middle of nowhere. And that's fine. But again, no problems there. But then they also set up an event in Vegas, which is a smart move. And I heard as many as possibly 10,000 showed up for this event. I don't have the details yet. And so this was an excellent example of somebody launching a viral situation that could have been dangerous. But then because of the rapidity of how fast you can interact on social media, people are able to get involved and start making adjustments in a very short amount of time, create another event, right, or couple, sort of get it together, back off, make changes, and ultimately, when it was all said and done, it was okay. There was no harm, no foul. It didn't damage the disclosure movement. It hopefully will not saddle Matty Roberts with a massive, bill from a couple of these counties, right, for security or whatever the hell. And okay, but that's in 2020 hindsight, right? From the front end, very scary proposition. So I hope we won't be seeing too much more of that.
But I was covering this and I was a bit worried about how it would go. But it turns out that people went to Alien Stock and this rock festival. Everyone seemed to have had fun. Everyone had a good time. And as you said, people just turned up. They wore their costumes. They didn't do anything stupid. But you were saying, to use your analogy and your metaphor, you were talking about he tapped into the gusher. But that is very interesting. But it shows that there is an awareness. There is something there, isn't there? Matty happened to create something viral because he managed to appeal to a sensibility that exists within a lot of people. And he got it from watching the Joe Rogan Experience, but there's other things, there's the Bob Lazar story and things like that. A lot of people are thinking things without necessarily saying them. And opinion polls seem to support this. It's up to 21%, I think, is latest, believe that they're aliens, ETs, the government know about it, the government are hiding it.
Yeah.
In US, yeah.
Not somewhere in the universe, but right here.
Yeah,
in our
on Earth.
Space, in our surround. That doesn't mean they're at the Starbucks. It means that they're here hanging out in whatever way they wish to hang out.
They've reached the Earth, and the government know about it, and they're not telling us. They have decisive physical evidence and decisive evidence. Other kinds, for example, Roswell, they're not telling us. Now, 21% is getting close to a quarter of people in a poll. That's so it was, people like you and me are obviously a very small vocal tip of a huge silent iceberg.
Right.
And things like Storm Area 51 are a great indicator that iceberg exists. And when things like that happen, it can make the iceberg grow bigger, I reckon.
Well, the other thing is that I all I do is this issue. I don't do anything else. I don't have a family. I don't have kids to take to school. I just do this. The vast majority of people, their life is pretty busy. Taking care of family, getting to work, and paying the bills, maybe going to school. It's like that. They know this stuff is happening. They don't have the time to jump into it and become very knowledgeable, but they know something's going on. They know it's important, but they lead their lives. And that's a lot of people. Millions and millions of people are leading the basic lives, but they're aware of certain things going on around them. And so what happened when Manny Roberts put that up, he gave all of those people a very easy way to go, oh, yeah. I am interested in this. Click. Right? And then go back to taking care of business and getting their work done and so forth. And that just gives us a glimpse of just how primed the general public is to react to very, very significant developments in this.
Exactly, yes.
And there's going to be more coming. And I'm sure there'll be more attempts to create a virality in this issue. It happens occasionally. There's talk about a march in Washington. I don't think that'll work. I don't think it can be done. It can be tried, but I don't think it'll fly. However, I would not be surprised if there wasn't a major march on Washington post-disclosure. And it would come about this way. The announcement would be made, and then all hell would break loose, in a sense. And a lot of people would want to know a lot of stuff from the government in a short amount of time. And that process would be going forward. And if the public is dissatisfied with how the government is handling, I guess you could say, the transition, the information learning curve, they're going to be fairly motivated about that. And now we're talking post-disclosure now, right? And so it's possible that a march on Washington could be organized to get the point across that, look, we're in a new era now. Don't think you're going to go back to business as usual. Meaning, yeah, there's ETs here. Now leave us alone. We've got a whole bunch of secret stuff we got to do, and you just get in the way. I could see a march on Washington then. I don't see it before disclosure.
Yeah, I mean, an announcement that these things exist, which is essentially virtually what happened on Tuesday. That cannot possibly be the end of it. That cannot be the end of the dialogue. Absolutely not. And I can well believe that this will go on to other things. And I can well believe there'll be a march on Washington. And I hope that people take part in it. Though obviously, I hope the bookshops stay open, because then people can go in and buy a copy of Roswell Rising and its sequels. Steve gave me the idea. You did. You gave me the idea for that book, Steve. You really did. So I've got to thank you for just giving me the idea.
If disclosure starts looking imminent, you better get another print run of that book.
I've got it standing by right now. Yeah.
Good. Keep well stocked. Friend.
Oh well, yeah. But you know what? Yeah. Oh God, I must do. Yeah, must do. What do you think of that? Something else I wanted to bring up with you. It just gets me notes. Just one second. Right. I had Colin Woolford on her Panama Radio a little while ago, and we were talking about the alien autopsy. Have you heard that? Well, it's all tied up to Dr. Edgar Mitchell and his legacy and his archive. But the famous alien autopsy video, is that real after all, do you think?
There are a number of examples in this history of this issue where you have evidence that could potentially be very significant evidence. But the way it came forward, the way it was handled, essentially diminished its value. Messy, controversies, and so forth that were part and parcel with that evidence coming forward. As a result, these examples of evidence lost a lot of their potential. The alien autopsy is a perfect example of this. It's a mess. And so from the standpoint, say, of a political activist who's trying to convince some top journalists they need to go deep into this issue, I see no benefit in parking the alien autopsy stuff in front of their nose. It's not going to help them at all. There are other examples of some very interesting, profound evidence. I don't want to get into them too much more than that because I'll just have people sending me nasty emails. But there is this, but fortunately, there's plenty of rock solid evidence and witnesses to make the case we don't need it. So that's kind of how I view that. Now, look, I know everybody wants to get to the bottom of everything. So there's a lot of people out there. Look, I want to know, is that real footage? What's the whole history? What's everything? All I can say is wait for the post-disclosure world, because in the post-disclosure world, a lot of sorting out is going to get done, and we may get to the bottom of a lot of these unresolved controversies, and be comfortable with that we know the truth of it.
Yeah, I guess that is one of these things that it can't be resolved at this present time. It's interesting nonetheless. It's an interesting turn up after years that this has been dismissed. Yeah, after years, because I dismissed it myself. I said, and then it suddenly comes back to bite you. But yeah, I mean, I've got a feeling that when the real story comes out, there'll probably be things that even you and I have never suspected. I really do just think that.
Absolutely.
I think no one's going to be more.
It'll be like Christmas.
We'll be profoundly shocked
on disclosure morning, right? Yeah. like we did when we were kids, right? All excited, right? Couldn't hardly sleep. Come down and go into the living room. There's a tree. There's all kinds of stuff underneath it, and we don't know what's in the packages. It'll be kind of like that. Only the government actually has to unwrap the packages for us. But yeah, there's going to be a lot of surprises. And that's fine with me. I like being surprised. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. Well, let's see how things go, because there's a bit of a running joke in the UFO community. This goes, when's disclosure going to happen? And the answer is 6 months. Whenever 6 months after you speak to Steve Bassett. However, it's just, so yeah. I mean, is this different now? Do you think? Do you think really, when you say like 6 months or so, is it you generally think that's going to happen?
Again, well, I get the joke. It's interesting. If you're going to be a political activist, if you're going to try to advance an issue, whatever the issue is, civil rights, women's rights, gay rights, independence movements, anti-war movements, you're not going to be very effective if your principal message is, we need to have the right to vote. I haven't the slightest idea when it's going to happen. It could never happen. Who the hell knows? But we need to get it now. Get on board. You have got to project as much as possible a sense of moving forward. So what I've done over the years is that when things are looking favorable, I point that out. If they're looking very favorable, I said there's potential this thing could break. But there have been years when I've said we're not going anywhere. We're stopped cold. After 9/11, the movement was stopped cold for a couple of years. Absolutely. But given how many years I've been sort of projecting and trying to get a sense of what could happen, people have sort of gone, he's constantly saying it's going to happen, but it doesn't. It's not quite like that, but I get it. And so when I say now we might be in the last months of the truth embargo, I would not be offended at all by someone going, I'll believe it when I see it, and I don't blame them. That's fine. But at least I'm keeping them informed. So if it doesn't happen, no harm. But if it does happen, they hopefully be a little better, more prepared for it.
Yeah, well, I always say to if for people who come up to me and they're pessimistic and they're cynical, I always say to me, well, look, what if your worldview turns out to be wrong? What if what I'm saying actually comes true? How will you feel then? You'll have missed out on it all, won't you? for your own cynicism. So that's how I respond to people who are excessively pessimistic, I think, because that's more sensible, I think.
I don't have a problem with people being cynical, really. The world can be very irritating and difficult. Life is brutal and short, right?
Yeah.
And that's human nature. What I'm offended is when that cynicism is being virtually imposed on people by government political policy. That's not acceptable. And that's what's going on. So a lot of the cynicism and skepticism is not the result, in many cases, of a reasonable analysis of the work and the evidence, and coming to a conclusion that this is just not there yet. No, it's coming from not much an examination of the evidence, but a view that has been instilled in them by government propaganda for decades. Now, that's happened in many countries over the centuries. And when the government does that, bad things happen. So it's one thing for people to have a certain attitude. It's another for that attitude being forced on them by political policy. Now, for some people, see no distinction here. I see a great distinction. In other words, if I want to be cynical, by God, I'm going to generate my own cynicism. It's going to come from my world, my view, and everything else. I don't want the government getting in my head going, yeah, you can't believe this. It's not real. Trust me, it's not real. We wouldn't lie to you, blah, blah, blah. So, again, people will figure this out when they are ready. That's why I don't persuade. I don't debate. I'd be happy to debate certain individuals in a formal way. That'd be kind of cool. But what I mean is I'm just not constantly debating with people trying to say, oh, yeah, you got to understand it. Everybody gets it in their own time. It's okay, right? My job is not to convince everybody this is true. My job is to end the truth embargo, be part of ending the truth embargo, which is preventing people from appropriately knowing that it is true. And that's not the same thing.
After 2016 election, a lot of people were downhearted. I know Grant Cameron was particularly depressed by the outcome of the US election. But the window was shut then. Would you say the window is now open? It's opening again? The window of opportunity?
Things shut down, there's no question. And they are starting to come back to life, but in a problematic environment. It's like a flower that's trying to bloom out of the soil, but the weather's not good and it's cloudy and there's some rain, whatever, and it's struggling. But there's something happening here that I think can't be undone, and so I'm not going to be shocked if we're at a very different place next year. It probably won't be this year, but it could be after next year. But all this depends on the political resolution in this country. If this crisis continues to get worse than it is now, it's going to be difficult for any major issue to be pursued appropriately to the satisfaction of the American people. The Congress won't hold the hearings. They'll be too tied up elsewhere. The journalists are going to be tied up. And this crisis is affecting people's very lives. The ET issue, ET's here, not here. For most people, it's like, yeah, well, they're here, great, but what does it do for me? That's pretty common. But the crisis we're in is affecting everybody. And so this is very personal. And so people are very much focused on this. And the ET thing is cool. But again, we got this thing. So this crisis needs to be resolved. But if it gets resolved, then I expect things to move very fast. And exactly who the people will be and who the politicians will be and how it'll unfold. And as I said many times, there's a very measurable chance that another nation will do it. And so it'll be a moot point, whether we have a crisis here or not. It'll be done. And then we will follow suit. And how that'll work out, I have no idea.
Well, we'll find out, won't we? I guess. Have to wait and see. What's your plans now, Steve, for the next foreseeable future in terms of your activism?
Well, there's some big major developments there. I was able to I was able to relocate back from California to Washington, D.C. to resume direct interaction on this issue. Not only that, I was able to secure an office in the National Press Building, which is where the National Press Club is housed. It's up in the 13th floor. This building is very well known, very prestigious. It's only 2 blocks from the White House.
Ah, that's where we had the citizen hearing, yeah.
Yes, citizen hearing was upstairs.
That same place, yeah.
But more importantly, we're very soon, probably mid-April, mid-October rather, going to launch a video podcast called The Disclosure Wire. The Disclosure Wire will be the first streaming broadcast out of Washington, D.C. ever on the extraterrestrial phenomena issue and all things exopolitical. And there's going to be guests, and I'm hoping I'm going to be able to get some guests because of the circumstances our location and everything else that you've never seen before talking about this issue. That's a major development. We on ParadigmResearchGroup.org website, there is a funding campaign there, Indiegogo campaign. That money is being raised it's primarily focused on being able to get pretty high-level video, audio equipment so that the podcast is high-level and professional. I mean, you can do a podcast or even a video podcast with an iPhone.
Well, so I'm doing that now, essentially.
Which is what you're doing now. But we need to take this up to a level that's commensurate with what you would get literally watching a television news show, though not as scripted, not as formal as that. So we're trying to raise some money for that, and the Disclosure Wire website will go up fairly soon. But the Indiegogo campaign for the Disclosure Wire, and by the way, Disclosure Wire is one word, is up now. So expect some developments there. And I have a co-host named who is Teresa Tyndall, and she is bringing a lot to the table here. She has a lot of contacts. She's making contacts. She's involved in UN stuff, and she's very smart. She's going to be an excellent co-host. And she is registered as a lobbyist. So now both of us are registered lobbyists, which is essentially something you do in order to keep the government happy. Being a registered lobbyist is about 2 things. One, accountability. That you're registered, they know who you are. And so if you're trying to make some particular law get passed and you're trying to influence a member of Congress, the government knows what's going on. And that's transparency. That's good. The other is money. They keep track of money that you get for your lobbying specifically. And they want to know who it's from, again, so they know who is trying to influence members of Congress. That is essentially what the Registered Lobbying Act is about. There are people up on the Hill all the time trying to influence that are not registered lobbyists, but there's a point where if you go beyond a certain point and you're not registered, it can become an issue. But most importantly, this is the most important issue in the world today. It should have registered lobbyists. It should have history professors teaching it at Harvard. It should have scientists working on it at every university in the country. Doesn't. So hell, I registered a lobbyist, so did Teresa. And she's going to be in the Hill. We're both going to be lobbyists there. We're both going to be having meetings. So that's going to be the next 6 to 12 months for me. And frankly, I intend to stay in Washington now until disclosure, if not further. But I'm not going anywhere until disclosure.
Right. Well, I'll look forward to the podcast. Certainly, I look forward to hearing that. The video cast you're going to do.
Video cast, what do you call it?
I'll look forward to that enormously. And I mean, yeah. So I was good on you. I sort of answered my last question, which was whether you're going to come over to Britain. But if you do, let us know.
I'm always open to speaking, and if I get an invite to speak, I'll come over. And it's possible I might come over just to get away. It could happen, and I'll try to give people notice. If somebody wanted to put together a lecture, I mean, like just a solid lecture with a decent audience, auditorium style, so forth, I'd love to talk with them because that's ideal. Conferences are fine, but boy, if you can get 500-600 people in a lecture hall with their full attention, it's powerful stuff. And I'm always looking to do that
Well, I'll be in touch with you, Steve, because I'm planning possibly doing that next year. I'll have to see how it goes, but I'll let you know. It'll be probably late next year. Won't be here for a while, but I will keep you posted with that. So, but obviously, I wish you all the best of luck. I really do. I really, I respect what you're doing. I really admire your vision, and I want it to come true as much as you do.
Thank you, and I always enjoy hearing the British accent. I don't know which version you got, but I like London. I like being in England. I like Londoners. I like Brits. They have certain qualities which I don't necessarily find here. So it's good to chat, and don't hesitate to get in touch if there's a major break and you want me to talk.
Thanks, Steve. That's really good. It's great to talk. It's great to talk to you again. It really is, and all the best.
Take care.
And that was the irrepressible Stephen Bassett, a guy I really respect and I really would like to see succeed in what he's doing. I've got my differences with him, of course. I've got my differences with everybody, but I like the man very much and admire what he's doing. And as you know, there's a part of me that keeps saying, no, it's not possible, the kind of willing disclosure that we're talking about here. But then I go back, especially usually when I listen to Steve, I go back and I think, well, what if it is, what if it is? And it sounds believable from his perspective, and he can make it sound plausible, and maybe it is plausible. Maybe it is. And as I said to Steve, it's better to be an optimist and be disappointed than to be a pessimist and be proven wrong. Because if you're a pessimist and you're proven wrong, you've missed out on all the excitement. You have, haven't you? You've not been invited to the party, have you? Or you've uninvited yourself to the party. This is why I take the optimistic route. I think there's going to be a lot more in the future. I don't see this momentum that has been started in 2019. And as I said before, I think 2019 may turn out to be the new 2016. And the momentum that has started now with the Wilson notes, with the Kit Green memos, and all these things coming out of Dr. Edgar Mitchell's archives, and all these other things that we talked about, I talked about with Steve, and I've talked about with Colin Wolford, and with other people, and with, of course, the TTIPs, the ATTIP thing, the TTSA, and everything that's coming out with that can only gather pace. That's not going to slow down any more than those lumps of cheese, that thing where they throw the cheese down the hill and everyone runs after it somewhere in the West Country. It's not going to slow down any more than that lump of cheese is going to slow down. I really, really do believe that. I'm absolutely certain there's a lot more to say, and there's a lot more coming out. I'm absolutely positive that's the case, and that there will be an update to this UFO Disclosure 29 series very, very soon. And maybe it'd be a good time, maybe I'll get Steve Bassett back on the show again. It'd be great to have him back. I love the guy. I really do. I hope he comes over to England and we can maybe organise a show for him, maybe have him at Dreaming Saucers. So, anyway, I'm off to the Probe conference. Yeah, this weekend it's Probe time, yay! So, yes, I am taking my camera. There will be a full reportage. I will record my talk, and that will be available sometime next week. This is probably going to be my last video now before I go, because it's now Monday evening, so I probably won't make any other more videos before I leave. I'm leaving on Thursday evening, so this will probably be the last one before then. But the Probe one will be coming up. And of course, don't forget, get your copy of Roswell Rising, a novel of disclosure. If you enjoyed what I talked about here and what Steve Bassett talks about, you'll love this book, because this book, written by me, Ben Emlyn Jones, it's a fictional book, it's a novel, it's a story. But it's based on the idea, if we have this truth embargo, we've been told lies about UFOs, there's been a cover-up. But what if we got the truth instead of lies? What would happen? And that question led me to writing this book. And it was actually Steve Bassett who gave me the idea, who said that someone should do that. And I thought, well, I'll do it then. So please do pick up a copy. It's only £10, and you'll enjoy it. And of course, read the others, because it's only the first part of the trilogy. So I'm pretty confident I don't have to advertise those, because once you've read the first book, you will want to read the other two. So I'm going to sit back and wait, looking forward to Probe as always very much. You know, I'm never happier than when I'm at Probe. So thank you all for watching Hapanwo TV once again. Hospital Porters, pride and dignity. Stop the New World Order.